Good morning, everybody. Um, just wanted to share something with you this morning. I've been reading in First John. This is coming out of chapter 3, verse 16. That's First John, not John, but First John 3:16. And I want to read this to you, and I think it kind of goes along well with what we've kind of been talking on the last couple of weeks. And it says this, as John's writing, he's saying, let me actually give you a little bit of context here. I'd encourage you to go back and read First John, but let me give you a little bit of a context. This, where I'm picking up in John, he's actually addressing Antichrist, and he's talking about, um, he's telling us, how do we know that we are of the truth? And and you'll read in a part in here, couple weeks ago that I read, and he talks about how that he that doeth righteousness is righteous even as he is righteous. And I've shared my story with you guys before of what the Lord kind of gave me revelation on righteousness and what he was talking about. And what he's talking about is the fruit. A person who's righteous, you're going to see the fruit of righteousness operate in their life. And so John, in some ways, as you read, and I kind of read in the context of him talking about Antichrist, and he's talking about how that that you're going to see truth from, like, you're going to know they're of the truth. And how do we know that? Well, for one, it's because of the things that come out of us, the things that we basically meditate on, that we do on, um, you know, as far as our thoughts and our things like that, that there's going to come actions forth from those things. And so one of the ways you can see if somebody's antichrist, well, they're not of the truth. Therefore, their actions are not going to be of the truth. And they're specifically in First John talking about love. Love, a person to say, hey, I love God, but yet his actions don't reflect, like he doesn't love his brother per se. His actions are not reflecting that, then he's a liar, because how can you say you love God and not love your brother? And so we pick up here in First John 3:16. I encourage you to go back and read the entire book and meditate and study on it. And if you see something that like, well, I see that differently, or I see, let me know. Let's talk about it. But First John 3:16 says, by this we know love, because he's laid down his life for us, and we ought also to lay down our lives for the brethren. But whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? He says, my little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. And by this we know that we are of the truth, and shall assure our hearts before him. I thought this was interesting because, and some of the things that we've been talking about, soul, we've been talking about heart, we've been talking about mind. And I do think in this place here that sometimes when you hear the word heart, it seems that it could be referencing the spirit. When you hear heart, it's the soul. However you look at that, I really think the way that we're able to, I almost think of the soul, the heart, and sometimes when the Bible talks about it, is the deep seated things, the things that, um, um, out of the heart, is what your mouth's going to speak. So it's things that are deeply rooted and seated. It's not like a passing knowledge of the mind, but it's actually something and into the deep part of the soul. Then there's times you look at the heart and you can think of it as when the spirit and the soul come into agreement. But look at this. He says, if our this is how we can assure our heart. This is how, you could say it this way, this is how we can assure ourself, our soul. And look what he says, though. This is interesting. Beloved, if our heart doesn't, excuse me, I skipped a line there. Verse 19, and by this we know that we are of the truth. So the very fact that we know that we are of the truth, which is Jesus, which is to know, it is all because of Christ, who I am, what I am. And to know that we are of him, that we are actively speaking the truth of the Word of God, the gospel, the good news of who God is and what He's gave us, that we are in Him and He is in us, and we are joined into Him, and we are of the truth. Listen what He says, and shall assure our hearts before Him. Well, He's following up from verse 18. Remember what I just read in verse 18. My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. So when you pair those verses together, it is literally when we take action to the things that we've been putting inside, the things that we've been renewing our minds with, and we've been exposing the lies of the devil. We've been exposing the lies of wrong belief. And and I'm going to say this again. Remember, I love this because I actually heard this just the other day, and sometimes we get caught up. Well, I don't have enough faith, or I don't. Actually, unbelieving is just believing in the wrong thing, and because to some level we're all believing in something, and so to be honest with you, unbelief is just believing in the wrong thing. And I actually heard that. I don't know. I was listening to somebody. I don't remember who I heard it from, but I'm like, man, that grabbed a hold of my heart. So how do we assure our hearts? How can we, have confidence in our hearts? And how do we know that we are of Him and of the truth? Well, kind of what John was talking about, the Antichrist, and he said, what's coming out? What's the actions? What's coming out of the heart? Like and he says here, it's not just in word. We can talk about love, we can talk about all of these things just in tongue and word only, and that's kind of what James alludes to as well. But it's actually in deed and in truth. And so the very fact that we take action is one way that we assure our hearts before the Lord, and we know that we are of Him and of the truth. Is the very fact that love, like I'm righteous no matter what I do, righteousness was a gift given to me. But the very fact that when I say that I'm righteous, and I abide in righteousness, and I abide in the truth, and I abide in Him, we're going to see those things come out of us. Just in the same way that you would see an apple tree produce apples. In the same way you see an orange tree produce oranges. The tree, as it is soaking in from the Word, and it has a root system, and it soaks in the water and all the nutrients. I mean, just as it does all those things, it produces fruit. In the same way, that's who we are. As we soak in all of who God is, He is the vine and we are His branches. We are connected to Him and out of the vine. And as we are branches, guess what? We produce fruit. And this is what John's talking about. This is how, and going back to that place, that we shall assure our hearts before Him, is because we have God living in us, and love is who our DNA is. That is who we are. And therefore, if I am love, I cannot but help love, not just in word, but also with action, in deed, and in truth. You guys, y'all have an awesome day, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. Thanks.